Here is the deal. Episode 23 of DISVENTURE Camp Season 4 just released a little over 15 hours ago as of editing this video. And I'm not kidding when I say this episode was absolute peak. Given how Season 4 has amazing episodes like Episode 19, 11, and others which are also peak and are amazing episodes in their own right. But in my opinion, Episode 23 is slightly better and is probably the closest thing we've had to a perfect episode in a while. AMD, I have next to no complaints about this episode, and the complaints I do have are relatively minor. So in today's video, I am going to be going over episode 23 and explain why, in my personal opinion, it is the best episode of DISVENTURE Camp Season 4 anyways. With that being said, onto the video. Starting off, the main reason I love this episode is because of how well it handles the premise and concept of what a motel and or filler episode is supposed to be. All stars did a pretty good job of handling the concept, but there were still some flaws with how the motel episode was written, with the main problem being that a lot of the characters, such as Miriam, Ashley, Lake, Connor, and others were left to the sideline in this episode, and they weren't really given anything to do. And in Season 4, this isn't the case, as there is only one real character in this episode who doesn't get anything of noteworthiness to do, with that being Ted, which we'll talk about later. Anyways, moving on to the actual episode, the opening was handled really well. I really like how they handled it. First off, I am glad that Natalia and Isabel reunited and got to have some interactions again this episode. As I really missed their dynamic, and Richard giving Isabel his hat was a really nice callback to when Isabel stole it in the first half of the season. And overall, I like how the opening montage does a good job of catching the chill mood of the episode, which is definitely a massive breath of fresh air, considering the past few Season 4 episodes have been pretty drama heavy. So having this episode where majority of the campers are just chilling to try and break that up is a good idea in my opinion. Moving on, I am really happy the Vibe Tribe is reunited. I am going to talk about this more in depth later, but they are easily the best part of the episode, and I really like what they did with all of them. And their senses are some of the best highlights in the episode. Also, Natalia and Alessio's interactions this episode were really sweet in my opinion. I'm not really sure if they're canon yet, as they've been hinting at it from the past couple of episodes, but I'm guessing they're going to become canon either off screen, or Natalia will mention it in Season 5. Also, Natalia's line to Richard here definitely caught me off guard, although it was really funny, once again proving that Natalia was robbed and is one of the best characters in the season. Also, I really liked what they did with Isabel this episode. Under normal circumstances, I would be a bit annoyed that they basically just made her entire role in this episode a gimmick and didn't give her much outside of her Jade plot. But I can excuse this for a number of reasons. First off, it was funny, and second off, considering Isabel was just eliminated, I don't really think giving her a big role in a motel episode would be all that fair or a good idea. So her just kind of goofing around with her Jade plotline fits better, as it gives her something to do, while also allowing the other characters that we haven't seen in a while to shine. Moving on to the challenge hosted by Richard. I thought it was okay, kind of boring, however, that's kindy of the point, given how this challenge is more so to give the characters some time to interact and to just have something to do, instead of having it be something really big and elaborate. And as a result, we got some pretty nice character interactions we probably wouldn't have. First off, I really liked Marisa's and Diagos dynamic this episode. I didn't really expect to like it all that much, but their dynamic has been really cool to see, and I'm glad this episode gave somebody for Diago to talk to that wasn't Spencer. Moving on to the next scene of the episode, which is the scene between Tristan and Zed, which is sort of hit or miss if I'm being honest. Now, I do like the dynamic, and I do like what the scene tries to do. Zed is going to be a bit cranky after everything he went through in the past couple of episodes, but the dialogue here feels really clunky and awkward. Which I do get is the point, as Tristan and Zed have never really had a serious conversation like this, but it still kind of makes the sense feel weird to watch. But I can excuse it though, as it's a relatively minor complaint. Also, the following up scene of Ivy spying on Tristan and Zed was pretty funny, mostly because of Alessio. For context, Ivy is spying on Tristan and Zed's conversation and she's yapping about it, and every few seconds.it just cuts to a frame of Alessio staring at Ivy and just not giving a fuck about what she's saying. That is really funny in my opinion, and this further proves to me that Alessio needs to return for season 6, because there is no way somebody like Alessio should be a first boot forever. Also, Spencer's and Benji's dynamic this episode was pretty decent. It's not really a main focus, but I do like what they did here, and Spencer giving Benji advice here was really sweet of him to do. And I did like how they handled Spencer this episode, even though he doesn't get that much screen time. Moving on to the next scene between Marisa and Daigo, which was really sweet in my opinion. As while these two have differing backgrounds, they both have the same struggle when it comes to finding out what they want to do in life, and their interactions this episode were really cool to watch. This is probably one of their better episodes of the season, given how they don't spend majority of the episode interacting with Spencer or Anastasia and more so get to do their own thing. Also, the end scene with Ivy and Alessio was really funny to watch, further proving why Ivy is the best DISVENTURE Camp season for character. Moving on to the next scene with Ted and everybody playing bingo. I thought it was really good scene as we got to see a decent chunk of the cast. First off, I think it's funny that Linda has canonically been taught by Benji what the word skillisher means, and I do like how Emily and Linda's rivalry is handled this episode. And I do wonder what a world where Linda made merge and Emily still returned would be like, as I think that could really highlight their rivalry. But I do have a small complaint here, and that is about Ted. I am going to keep this brief, but in my opinion, Ted was really wasted this episode. Now this isn't to say he's bad, he does have his moments, but he doesn't really get anything of relevance to do this episode. And his first line in the episode is at the 14-minute mark, halfway into the episode, and it just seems sad for him not to get anything to do this episode. In my opinion, the best way to fix this would be to give him a plot line with Isabel. Given how these two had a small rivalry and some interactions at the start of the season, I think making them pair up would be the smart move. As not only would this give Ted somebody to actually fucking talk to this episode, but it would also give Isabel something to do outside of her Jade plot, but that's a minor complaint. Anyways, moving on to one of the highlights of the episode, which is the scene between Tristan and Benji, which was really sweet. Before this episode, I was a fan of Tringy, but I wasn't really a huge fan of it, and I did think some of the hype was tad bit overblown. And after watching this episode, it's safe to say that it is one of my favorite ships from season 4, and I hope they become canon, because if they don't, then like what the fuck? These two are just made for each other, and their interactions this episode were really sweet and honestly a massive breath of fresh air given how we haven't really scenes like this for a while now. Anyways, with that being said, moving on to the jury roundtable part of the episode, which in my opinion was pretty good, and I'm going to be reviewing each section of it in order. First off, starting with Anastasia's segment, which I thought was pretty decent. I do think it's a bit odd how Natalia randomly said she likes Anastasia when she literally told her to go fuck herself like 6 episodes ago, and that felt a bit weird and felt like it came out of nowhere. And I like how even some of the people that were wronged by her, such as Emily, Richard, and Natalia, weren't petty, which was pretty cool to see. And Marisa defending Anna here was also sweet. Moving on to the next section, which was about Hannah, in my opinion, it was handled pretty well as it was relatively balanced, with her receiving a lot of criticism, mostly from Zed, but also being praised for making it as far as she has despite knowing nothing about the game beforehand. Also, Benji defending Hannah here was honestly really sweet to see. I do get why Zed is pissed at Hannah as she, to put it lightly, was an asshole to him for majority of the season and got basically no consequences for it despite the fact she was in the wrong. But I do think him claiming Hannah doesn't have a good social game is kind of odd, and more so comes of Zed being biased and petty, and more less of him making a good point. Zed is pretty justified to be petty this episode though, so I won't really go to in depth here. Moving on to the next section, which was Jade, which was pretty good. First off, I really like Emily, despite being wronged by Jade numerous times, still didn't get petty and mostly kept what she said based on facts and not her own personal opinions. And this episode was a really good showcasing for Emily, and I like what they did with her here. and she was arguably the best part of this jury roundtable. But some of the criticism Jade got here were valid, as majority of her moves were hiding behind scapegoats, as Zed said, and she was never really called out for any of the big moves she made directly. Biggest example is how she was never really called out for her role in Isabel's plan. Overall though, Jade's section was pretty good. Anyways, moving on to the last section, which was kind of a mixed bag, which was Logan's, which felt kind of odd. Like, I get that Natalia, Richard, and a decent chunk of the people in the jury like Logan, but it felt too much like a lot of them were glazing him instead of acknowledging some of his faults. Now, I'm not saying they had to call out Logan and burn him at the stake, as that would have been out of character, but I feel like at least one of them should have acknowledged that what he did to Zed was pretty fucked. It was a bad thing for him to do. Overall though, his section was just okay, I guess. I didn't hate it, but it was the worst out of the 4. Overall though, I really liked the jury roundtable section, and even though I think some parts of it could be better, it was an enjoyable watch overall. Anyways, moving on to the scene with Zed and Ivy, and Zyde's character as a whole this episode. Now, a lot of people probably think Zed was really annoying this episode, and I do understand that, and I partially agree that he was really petty, but in my opinion, he is entirely justified to do so. Considering he spent a good chunk of his last episodes getting shit on for little to no reason, and ended up getting betrayed by 2 people who he thought had his back, I think it makes sense for Zed to be extremely salty, especially considering virtually nobody is backing him up. And if I'm being real, if a lot of y'all were in the same situation as Zed, you would be salty too, and I really do feel bad for Zed here, as he really doesn't deserve this, considering how bro did pretty much nothing wrong the entire season. Moving on though, the follow-up scene between Zed and Benji was really nice, and I'm glad the 2 of them made up, and Ivy and Benji making up was really sweet to see. Also, Benji being invited to the Vibe Tribe was amazing and a really cool decision, and the big highlight of T.I.'s episode is the last scene between Ivy and Tristan. And while I could explain why this scene is incredible, I think it would make more sense if I just played it for y'all, as it is absolute peak.
Live with me, Tristan.
Whoa. What?
Move to LA and be my roommate. Well, you'd fit right in, and I can show you around, and we can hike and take pictures and go to the beach and...
Wait, Ivy, are you serious?
We're 2 peas in a pod. I just want to give you the space you deserve to thrive in.
I don't know what to say.
Yes, you want to say yes.
Yes! Of course, I would love that.
This scene is probably the main reason why this episode is my favorite of season 4, and I really love how it was executed, and it was really well written, and it makes perfect sense for Ivy to do this. Also, Ivy subtly hinting that Benji likes Tristan was pretty funny as well, and this sense basically confirms that Tringy is going to become canon sometime in the future. Anyways, moving on to the last sense of the episode between Isabel, Ted, Alessio, and Natalia, which was pretty cool in my opinion. The main highlight though is this scene where Isabel starts yapping about Jade again, only to be cut off, which really caught me off guard. At first, I thought it was a glitch, but the second I realized it was intentional, I immediately laughing. Overall though, that's about all I really have to talk about. So I'm just going to get into the conclusion of this video. In conclusion, DISVENTURE Camp Season 4 Episode 23 is the best episode of the season in my opinion, as it handles everything it sets out to do almost perfecto, and the minor complaints I do have with it don't outweigh how good this episode is, and episode 23 should be an example of how you make a great Motel episode. And I'm really hip to see what comes next, because if Odd Nation Cartoons can make a 10/10th episode Motel episode, I can only imagine what's going to happen next as we get closer and closer to the finale. Anyways, that's about all I got. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, and turning on post notifications so you never miss another video from me, and join my Discord server, which is linked in the description down below. Anyways, that's about all I got. Thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out, take care, bye bye.